does it mean to teach for the heart, and why is it important? Let's explore this important question today. Well, welcome back to the Teach for the Heart podcast, where we tackle teaching challenges from a biblical perspective. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. I'm here today with Sarah Humes, one of our Teach for the Heart Plus mentors and Teach for the Heart team members. And we're going to talk about what does it mean to teach for the heart. We'll also talk a little bit about why that's our name and why that matters in your classroom. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this episode.
So I want to start by kind of sharing a little bit of why we are called Teach for the Heart. And it's not just so we could talk about Teach for the Heart, but it's because this principle that was built into the name of the organization is actually something core that I believe, and I think a lot of you believe too. But I was just talking to Sarah and saying, we actually don't talk about this that much, which is ironic because it's literally our name. So, when I first was going to create Teach for the Heart, it's like I had to come up with a name. I was just going to be a blog, and I was really just, debating all these different names. And I was thinking a little bit about what does it mean to teach? What is important in teaching? And in particular, at that time, I was really thinking about how important it is to teach for the heart, meaning when we're teaching students to do it in a way that's reaching not just their external, not just their minds, but also into their heart. And part of the reason I was thinking so much about this was because I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of focus on external, a lot of focus on what you wear and how you look and what you do and how you present yourself. Um, but a lot of times there was not a lot of focus on like what's actually in your heart
Mm.
and what's actually behind your actions and your motivations. And I had noticed this kind of disconnect between, kind of really focusing on like do and recognizing like, okay, you can use all kinds of tactics to get someone to do what you want, but if the change is just surface level and it doesn't reach down into your heart, um, it's just only going to last so long as the circumstances last, right? But when we really change in our hearts, when we truly believe something, then that is a true change that will then manifest in all these different external actions, and it's really going to last. So that's where I was thinking about it, and that's where I said, okay, I want to call it Teach for the Heart, because we're teaching not just for the external, not just for the mind, but also trying to reach students in their hearts.
I absolutely love that. It resonates so much with me because it doesn't matter what subject I was teaching. I was always trying to, it wasn't just about memorizing facts for me. It was, how can you take this and apply it to your real life? And how can you, even more than just spiritual matters, I was like, these things that you're learning, you can apply them and make the world better. And so this resonates so much with me, Linda. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to kind of dive into some examples of what this actually looks like. And I hope that as you're listening to this, you might realize, wow, I'm already doing that in a few areas, but that will hopefully also give those of you that are listening some ideas on, oh, wow, I can take this a little bit further too. So one area that is like almost like top goal, where this can show up is in Christian schools. We are allowed to actually disciple students and actually share with them about God and go for that like heart change that is eternal and pointing students towards God. So that is like, to me, that is like the end all be all, like best case scenario when we're able to really help them, believe, love, worship God, repent of sin, like, and really just put all the pieces together. I think that's really, really amazing when we're able to just help students in a variety of ways and see like, wow, there was true heart change. That is like the most exciting kind of highest form, I think, of teaching for the heart. But there's a lot of other ways, even if you're not in a Christian school, or we don't see that every day, right? That we don't get to do that every day. Those are kind of those special moments. But I do want to start there because that is something that, especially if you're in a Christian school, you should be seeking. And God is still working in public schools, so you can't be as overt, but God can still do that work in students' hearts no matter where we teach.
Absolutely, he can.
So that first area is, actual spiritual change in our heart, worship. The second area, though, where I think we can teach for the heart is in motivation. Okay. And there's so much. I mean, how do we motivate students is such a big topic right now because we're seeing a huge issue with student motivation and so much demotivation. And there's so many ways to tackle this. But I do not think we should ignore the heart aspect of this, right? And so internal motivation would look like, okay, a student actually realizing, oh my goodness, my education is important. I actually want to do my best because this is going to better my life. If that, just think for a second, if that heart change is happening, the external is going to take care of it, right? That's so much more powerful than I guess I'll do this so I can get the piece of candy. So that's not to say we should never offer candy, but that when we are able to teach, really get to the heart. And Dave Stewart Jr. talks a lot about this. He had his entire model for motivation is based on like 5 key beliefs, which are heart beliefs and kind of things that we can do to gradually help shape what students actually believe. But I think, yeah, motivation is definitely an area where this can show up and where we have an opportunity to gradually make an impact on students.
Yeah, and I love using the big pictures of what Dave has talked about in those 5 key beliefs. Particularly, I love when we can see that our students are whole people.
Mhm.
And if we can show them what we're teaching matters to what matters to them. I love bringing real life examples to their world. So one time I was teaching math to a young man who honestly, he was not gonna graduate if he did not pass this math class. And so I was brought in as a one-on-one tutor, and I got to work with him because he loved construction. And so I brought everything into a construction lens for him. And it was the highest honor to watch him come alive as he got to see, "Oh, yes, this does matter because I'm gonna use this every single day in my future job." And it was so exciting. And I had another student who despised my Spanish class with every part of his being, but he was very passionate about his EMT work. And so I gave him a list of medical words and let him engage with those words. And he's like, wow, this is kind of cool. And just by meeting students where they are with what matters to them most, sometimes it just gives them another chance to come alive and be interested in what we're teaching them.
Yeah, I love that so much, and it even brought to mind kind of this idea that too with beliefs are also not just like yes or no, especially something like schoolwork matters. It's not like sometimes it's like we're moving students just a tick. Maybe it does. Maybe this is a little, you know what I mean? Just like helping them see. And sometimes you have those opportunities to make a huge swing. Wow. This really, really matters. So that's really cool. We're gonna link in the show notes to some of the episodes we've done with Dave because we're talking here about kind of the idea of, does schoolwork matter? But there's so many other pieces to that, so many other beliefs. The work, will my hard work actually pay off? Can
Mhm.
I succeed if I do this? There's so many pieces to that. So we're just really scratching the surface. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. It's a new year, and that means brand new resources from the Herzog Foundation for Christian Educators. Their full calendar of events is now live at herzogfoundation.connect.space. The Herzog Foundation Institute offers free training events designed specifically for educators like you. In partnership with organizations like Answers in Genesis and the Museum of the Bible, these trainings provide hands on strategies, biblical resources, and practical classroom tools to help you integrate faith and learning every day. And the best part, they are completely free for you and your school or homeschool group. Whether you're looking for fresh inspiration for your classroom or professional development to grow your ministry, the Herzog Foundation is here to help. Find an event near you at herzogfoundation.connect.space. Now back to our conversation. So, internal motivation is one area. Another area where we can teach for the heart is classroom management issues. Okay. So there is so much when we teach, in classroom management plan that is kind of more outward or just like transactional, right? You do this, you get this. And that is an important part of our plan. That is like a base that we absolutely need. But it's important to also recognize that there are opportunities to go underneath that, right? Like that is our base level that just keeps almost like the laws of the land, right? It keeps things running. But there's opportunities sometimes to have a conversation with the student or to go deeper, have a meeting with a parent and kind of try to figure out what is actually going on. Why is the student doing this? What maybe underlying fear, concern, problem, ambition, like what is going on in their heart that's causing this behavior? And when we can actually address that, that is going to make that long-term change. So I really see classroom management. I mean, there's probably multiple prongs, but it's almost like two prongs, right? There's our standard things that we do, the consequences, the expectations, the procedures, all of that structurally. But then there's this underlayer, particularly when something, I think I like to pull this out, just some ideas of when to pull this out. When you have a student that's doing something out of character, what's going on? When you have continual chronic problems that you're like, the normal is not fixing this. There's something else. Or just anytime you feel the Holy Spirit lead you, these are particularly answers. So, for example, something as simple as blurting out. If you're able to have a conversation with the student or, whatever methods you're using, get them to the point of actually realizing, oh my goodness, when I blurt out answers, it actually causes problems for my teachers and classmates. I feel bad and I want to change. That is totally different than a student just being like, I guess I won't blurt out because I don't want to get in trouble, right? You really
Yes.
changed, and that's going to help them as a person, but also like they're going to be cause much fewer problems then. So when we have the opportunity to do that, makes such a difference. Sarah, have you ever had opportunities where you've kind of been able to get to the heart of an issue with a student? I don't know. I think of a lot of examples with parenting, but
Yes. Well, I just think of the times where I've had students reflect.
Mm,
A lot of times, just the way the school day is structured, I don't have time to have those deep conversations. But one of the consequences in my classroom are reflection essays. And so sometimes that's what they would get assigned, particularly for things like blurting or, inappropriate behavior in the classroom. And so they would have to reflect on the impact their behavior had on their classmates, on the learning, on the efforts of the day. And that I mean, some students just once again went through the motions of doing the essay, but others, particularly those who were not repeat offenders, they were like, oh, yeah, that was not my best moment. And it was a particularly powerful intervention. So I
yeah.
really appreciated that.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, yeah, you're right. There's definitely not always time to have these. Like, these are kind of few and far between where you can actually talk with a student in depth. So that is a great way, discipline essays. And then also, like, don't ever underestimate what, like, a couple sentences of a thought provoking question or just something that you can drop on a student, particularly older, upper elementary into secondary, the impact that can have. So I think this is just something to be aware of and just kind of have in the back of our mind and to sometimes ask ourselves, like, what maybe is going on underneath here? And just keep an eye out for that. Like, if you just kind of open your eyes to this whole heart underneath issue, underneath things, it's kind of amazing, you know, and pray about it too, and
Yes.
see what God opens your eyes to. It's kind of cool. You might have some cool opportunities there. So, classroom management issues. The last one that we're going to talk about today is personal growth, right? So, I think there's a lot of one of the reasons a lot of us are teachers is because we want to see students grow, right? Not just academically, but also in their personal lives, right? Grow in character, integrity, work ethic, like all of these, citizenship, all these things. And so, similar to classroom management, there's sometimes opportunities to help students grow, whether it's in large group conversations, individual conversations, activities that we do with them, all kinds of ways. But, for example, a student that's saying, wow, I realize integrity matters. I want to be a person of integrity. That's like a heart change, right? Versus, if I can get away with a lie, I'll do it. Right. That
Yes.
totally, totally different. So kind of those, I think we have those opportunities sometimes to move students' hearts. And there's oh my goodness, we could do a whole nother episode on like all there's so many different ways, winsomeness, little sermonettes, conversations, activities, so many things. But yeah, that's a really, really amazing.
It really is. And one of the things that I really wanted to instill in my students is that learning doesn't always have to be this cumbersome, heavy thing. It can be fun and it can be light and it can be enjoyable. And I think that truly most of my students that I've had found that to be the case because it was, my classroom was a very happy environment where learning was natural. And that, even things like that are ways to really teach to their hearts and to their person and say that it doesn't have to be just this duty of memorizing. It can be really learning how to converse or understand each other or listen to each other or, you know, learn to really deeply understand something you're interested in. I think that there's so many different ways that we can do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? So we've been talking a lot of the examples I've given are more like, almost like right and wrong or like type of examples, but beliefs are so powerful and I think a lot of the beliefs that really sink down sometimes are things that aren't even explicitly taught. They are absorbed from a culture, right? So you're saying I created this culture where learning is fun and light and beautiful. Like that's something that can sink down just it's like dripping, dripping, dripping day
Yeah.
after day after day after day and sink down and be like, "Oh." And by the end of the year, their heart has changed without any moments of fanfare, just with the drip, drip, drip of this culture and seeing it lived out. And I think there's so many different examples we could pull out. Yours example was like learning is fun and wonderful, but so many different things. So I guess recognizing that what you believe in your heart, if you that you put out there day after day after day, can have a really powerful impact too.
It really does. And it just makes me so excited because when you have educators who are passionate about what they're teaching, that is going to impact their students so much more than they realize. So I definitely encourage, if you really want to teach for the heart, definitely be passionate about what you're teaching too, because it's so exciting when you see someone who is thrilled about what they're teaching.
Yes, there's really no replacement for just kind of genuinely liking your subject, and that's a whole other
Yes.
tangent, but if you're like, "But I don't," kinda dig into it, see what you can find that does excite you, and because that makes such a big difference, you're so right. Well, we're running out of time. I was going to talk kind of more about one of our 10 commandments of classroom management is actually you must seek to understand the root cause of misbehavior and address them at a heart level when possible. But I think we kind of covered that. If you kind of want to dive deeper into that, you can go back and listen to, we have a whole bunch of resources on our 10 commandments. You can check out the whole playlist. You can grab our starter pack. We'll link all those links down below. Or if you just say, man, I need more help with classroom management but I wanna do it with somebody that gets this, that gets that the heart matters, that gets that all this is important. We'd love to have you in Classroom Management 101. We will help you implement a classroom management plan that's rooted in these beliefs. So you can go to teachfortheheart.com/CM101 and use the code podcast20 to save 20%. Sarah, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
I just want to encourage educators to keep teaching for the heart because it really does matter, even on the days when it feels like it doesn't.
Absolutely. That reminds me exactly of what we say at the end of every episode. It's you're probably used to hearing it, but it's intentional. So listen carefully to this one today. So thank you guys for being here. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. All views and opinions are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of the Herzog Foundation. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to being with you again soon. In the meantime, teacher, remember, God is at work in you and through you, and He's using you to make a difference. Keep your eyes on Him and teach for the heart.